It's the Bullseye Halloween special. I'm Jesse Thorn. My guest this week is named Cassandra Peterson, but you probably know her as Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, probably the most famous Halloween character since Dracula. For 36 years, Peterson has rocked a giant wig, a tailored black dress, and glossy black nail polish. She's appeared on countless television shows. She's had 2 movies, and since 1983, she's appeared live on stage at Knott's Berry Farm in Orange County, California, for a special nightly Halloween performance. This year is her last year on stage. When did it start? Back in 1981. Peterson was working with the Groundlings, and she got a gig hosting the spooky B-movie TV show Movie Macabre on a local LA TV station. In those late-night episodes, sprawled out on her signature red velvet couch, wearing all black, Cassandra Peterson became Elvira.
Who's there? Is that you? Come in, darling. I've been expecting you. Oh, come in. Don't be afraid. I won't bite, and you're bound to have a good time. Or my name isn't Elvira.
That's hilarious.
Cassandra Peterson, welcome to Bullseye. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Wow, I forgot about that voice. My voice has since gone down about 12 octaves.
Yeah, I mean, in listening to that,
God.
the first thing that I wondered was, you've been doing this character. That's 1981.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this character for 35 years. What is different about Elvira in 2017?
Well, my voice is lower, like I said. So are a lot of other parts of me. Well, we won't go there. Let's see. My hair is maybe much higher than it was. I started out with very flat hair. It was a bouffant, but it was so low. When I look at old pictures of me, I'm always shocked. I can kind of tell what year it is by how high my hair was. That's kind of the only difference.
I like to imagine that you're adding on to it like the Winchester Mystery House or something. It's just each year a new layer gets added.
I did do that for a while. My hair got so damn high in the 90s that I looked like Marge Simpson. It started looking ridiculous. I had to tone it down, and then we found a happy middle ground. Not too flat, not too high, just right. And I've sort of stuck with that from then on.
The character kind of came out of something that you were doing at the Groundlings in the late 70s and early 80s, but it wasn't like a literal, translation of something you were doing at the Groundlings. Where did it come from?
Right. Not like Pee-wee, who actually developed his character there. I had a dopey Valley Girl kind of character that I was using at the time in a couple of sketches, and she was kind of a bimbo, kind of a smartass, kind of a Valley Girl. And when I heard about this interview for a job, which we're, as Groundlings, always looking for jobs, I decided I'd kind of go with that character, use the Valley Girl thing and the smart alecky talk. And I didn't know if it would work or not, but the director liked it. So,
I mean, why wasn't it just like, what led you to do that and not Bela Lugosi voice or whatever?
Well,
it's me, Vampira.
That is what they kind of were looking for, and they had a script. That was an old Vampira script, and really the first lines in it were, "Come in, darling, drink a glass of blood," And I have to say, the script was so kind of bad. It probably played well and awesome in 1951, but it was really not that funny. It has some jokes in it. So being an improv person, I decided to just improvise. And, it wasn't like I was dying to get this job, really, like paid $300 a week, and it was on local TV. And it wasn't like, oh, my God, my big break. So I wasn't that thrilled about the whole thing. So I just started improvising and kind of did the character that I was using at that moment in the Groundlings. And the weird thing about that was that it really didn't go with horror movies at all. I mean, it was so different from that, but they liked it. They liked the humor. Then I had to come up with a costume.
So when they said come up with a costume, like, did they just give you $100 and send you to Fredericks of Hollywood or whatever? Like,
No, not exactly. They said you've got to come up with a spooky looking outfit because you're hosting horror movies after all. And I said, that's awesome because I love horror movies. What I did first was go to my best friend at the time, who was a wonderful artist. And I sat down with him and I said, we've got to come up with a cool look, that's spooky and blah, blah. So we talked about it, and we both decided we were in love with Sharon Tate's character in The Fearless Vampire Killers. And we were like, let's go that way. I'll have long, curly red hair and kind of a sheer diaphanous gown that's tattered and kind of a dead girl makeup, white lips and big black circles around the eyes. And so that's what he drew up. I have that picture still. I just put it in my book that came out recently. And they hated it. They just took one look at it and said, "No, you're kidding. You have to have all black. You have to have black hair, black clothes." It was like, oh God, so typical, We're like, oh, well, what are we going to do to update that look so I don't look like I'm ripping off either of them? But when your parameters are all black with black hair, what do? And you're supposed to be some kind of vampire or something. So my friend Robert and I came up with ideas to make it look kind of hip and 80s, kind of punk, And there was no goth. We had never heard of goth movement at that time. If there was, it may have been over in England, but I'd never heard of it. So we tried to do a little, heavy metal, little punk stuff here and there, jagged edges, some safety pins, some leather bracelets with studs on them. And then he happened to be the world's biggest fan of Ronnie Spector from the Ronettes. And he said, I've got to do your hairdo. You have to have Ronnie Spector hair. And I was like, Ronnie Spector hair? What do you mean? He goes, it's called a knowledge bump. And that's what we'll do. So he actually bought the wig, cut it, and styled it into Ronnie Spector hair.
when you started doing it, did you feel like, this works?
No, I didn't feel that way right away. I felt like an idiot. I felt like, this is ridiculous. This is not that funny. When we started out, this was awesome. We started out, instead of laying on my red sofa, that's kind of become my signature sofa, I was standing under a street light. So it kind of felt like I was a vampire hooker or something. I don't know. It was odd. It
wasn't chaste like the later iterations of Elvira.
No, yeah. Later she got exactly, chaste. But no, it was. I didn't think it was working. I thought it was ridiculous. And the way I knew it was working is that a few weeks into it, I got called by the Tonight Show to come on the Johnny Carson show with Johnny Carson. I was like, oh my God, why? Why? What's going on here?
I feel like what a bizarre big break. Like to get the call from the Tonight Show. Yeah. You're like, great, I've been a showgirl. I've been toured with a band. I've been with the Groundlings for 5 years. I've been in movies. I've been, all these things that you had done. And they're like, yes, we would like you to wear the local television dress.
Here's a couple of things, though, that are very odd. When I look back and I think about it, it did come from just out of the blue. I was an actress. I was a comedian looking for work. But when I think about things from my childhood, number one, my mom ran a costume shop, my mom and my aunt. So I dressed up in wacky costumes all the time and really awesome costumes because they would sew me whatever happened to be hot at the time, like I Dream of Jeannie costume or Ginger from Gilligan's Island. So they would make those costumes for me, and I'd go out. And as young as second grade, I won costume contest. I won a $100 bond dressed as Miss Kitty from Gunsmoke, barroom girl. Here I was with garter belt, high heels. You actually, oh my God.
There's a picture of you in the book that you mentioned, your coffee table book that came out last year.
Yeah, that's the weirdest part.
Like a 5 or 6 year old dressed as, what's it called, the Queen of Halloween or something like that?
Yes. I asked my mom to make me a costume, my first Halloween costume when we lived in Kansas on a farm. And I guess we were so poor she couldn't afford fabric because she made it out of crepe paper. So she makes this black and orange costume for me with a crown and a scepter because she asked me what I wanted to go as for Halloween, and I said, I want to be the Queen of Halloween. So, I mean, really? That's pretty odd, right?
Was the rest of your family life as a kid secure or happy or?
It was pretty crazy. It was, I had been burned when I was about almost 2 years old. So I was in and out of hospitals having surgery a lot. I pulled a giant kettle of boiling water over on me when I was about 2 out on the farm and had
Kettle of Easter egg water, right?
Easter boiling water that my mom was making Easter eggs.
Which explains your lifelong antipathy towards Easter and love of Halloween.
Yes, I hate Easter and Christmas. No, I got burned, and that was one of the reasons I think we've eventually ended up moving even to Manhattan so that we could be closer to the hospital in Kansas City. But so I had a lot of surgery, and I had kind of an odd life. When I went to school, my burns were very, very visible on my neck and my shoulders. I got made fun of by kids constantly. So I really, really went inward. Became very quiet, very shy, very strange. And so I don't know. It led me to become kind of a freak back then. I think I got into horror collecting. I think it was either Famous Monsters, I think of Filmland, that I got hold of a comic or a magazine. And then for Christmas, I would ask for the Aurora model kits of Frankenstein and the Mummy and Dracula, because kids were always calling me a monster. So I thought, monster? That's awesome. So I don't know. I was not a very social kid or teenager, that's for sure.
I feel like Famous Monsters of Filmland is one of the original geek texts.
It is.
There was only a few things that you could be a geek of at the time. It was before geek culture as we know it had been created. I mean, there's no Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, right?
Nothing.
But you could go to a newsstand and get this Movie Monster magazine, and it was like it was the cultural exchange for geekdom, even if you didn't know another kid who was into it at your school or whatever.
And I didn't, which was so weird. And girls doing that at the time I think was especially bizarre. But I had two things that I was really into when I was really young, and that was the Famous Monsters and collecting the monster models and all that. And then Superman. I was really into Superman. And I collected all those comics. My uncle owned a drugstore, and I got to go to the drugstore, and there'd be a rack, of comic books that spins around. And I got to sit there and read all the comic books. I didn't even have to buy them because he'd let me read them if I put them back and didn't mess them up. So I was really into those two things when I was a kid. And there were no other... I couldn't find friends who were into that too, really. There were a few boys who were into the Superman comic books, but nobody that was into the horror thing.
You actually graduated from high school and went to Las Vegas to be a Las Vegas showgirl.
I did.
That strikes me as the most astonishing amount of chutzpah for a 17-year-old to...
Yeah, I don't know what the heck. I think it was really due to my art teacher who I had, this guy named Mr. Samuelson. And he was actually retired, but he came back. He was an older man, and he came back to teach art at my high school. And I remember after I watched Viva Las Vegas with Elvis and Anne Margaret going, that's what I want to do, go to Vegas and be a showgirl. My parents and my relatives looked at me like I was an idiot. I mean, it really did. They said, you are not tall enough, you are not attractive enough, you're not thin enough. Where'd you get this ridiculous idea? You could never do this. And he said to me, what do you want to be when you get out of high school? I said, a showgirl in Las Vegas. And he said, well, go do it. And I said, what do you mean do it? You just go do it. I think he invented the Nike slogan, just do it. He was ahead of his time. And I admired him so much and believed in him so much that I went, okay. But I did have a coincidental thing happened. I that summer before my senior year, I went to, or during the spring break, actually, of my senior year, my parents took myself and my two sisters on a vacation to California, and we stopped in Vegas, and I begged my parents to take me in to see one of the shows because I was so obsessed with them. And I put on a little wiglet, and I put on my Fredericks push-up bra, and I had to look sophisticated, because I had to go into a showroom and lie to them about my age. So I had a fake ID that said I was 21, so that was awesome. So going with my parents, and the the maitre d' said, "Are you a showgirl in Las Vegas?" Of course, I looked like one. I had like 3 pairs of eyelashes on and cleavage and
like a shark's teeth.
Wig. Yeah. So I said, "No, I'm not." I just tried to get away as quickly as I could. Next thing I know, we're sitting at the table with my mom and dad. I'm drinking champagne, and this woman named Fluff, I'll never forget her name, Fluff, came out. She was the dance captain, and she asked if I would like to go backstage. They were hiring showgirls for a new show that was coming out, and would I like to audition? And I was just, well, I started crying then because I said, "No, I'm underage. I can't." And they said, "Well, don't worry. I think we could still work that out." And they did. They got me a contract. My parents had to sign off on it, get a lawyer. I couldn't come in the hotel. I had to just come in the back door and do the show, prancing around in just a G-string with a lot of feathers. And my parents certainly did not want me to do it. It took me 3 months of fighting, threatening, crying, screaming, running away to finally allow them to sign the contract. I mean, they finally just gave in because they were like, "What are we going to do? She's going to disappear." I really made their life a living hell, I'm sure.
Well, let's listen to Elvira. And my guest, Cassandra Peterson, has been Elvira the last 35 years or so. This is another clip from Movie Macabre, the television program that made her famous, got her on the Tonight Show in the early 1980s. They showed on the show terrible, often, monster movies and horror movies. Elvira's role on the show was to be entertaining enough that the movies were watchable. And this is Elvira's thoughts on the 1978 international smash hit, Legacy of Blood.
Big surprise finish. How they really came up with a swell twist. Sure had me guessing. Sure. I bet when this one played in the movie houses, they used the old cliche, "Absolutely, positively, nobody will be admitted into this theater during the final 10 minutes of this motion picture. Unless, of course, you have $3.50 in your pocket, and then we just might reconsider." What a dumb movie. I'd call it an insult to your intelligence, if you had any intelligence to insult. I mean, I get paid for watching this garbage, but what's your excuse?
Oh, my God. I remember, it sounds so old and so horrifying. I remember one other joke from that, and it was Legacy of Blood. And I said, "You know what a legacy is, right? This is my legacy, and this is my other legacy." Oh, my God. That's how bad the jokes were. Oh, God. It was Shecky Green time.
That's far below Shecky Green, I hate to tell you.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe you're right.
That's sort of an aspiring Shecky Green situation.
Sorry. It got better over the years, I think. I don't know. Well, I'm not sure, but...
When you were a showgirl, did you think that it was what you wanted it to be?
No, it wasn't what I wanted to be at all. It was a really hard job. We did 3 shows a night. You had to get there early. I had to have body makeup put on head to toe.
Because of your burns?
Because of my burns. And so I had to come in really early. I had to be there all night. You had 3 shows with this long break in between where you just sat around doing nothing. Everybody else was drinking, and they'd go out to the bar and gamble and stuff. Not me. I'd sat in there staring at myself. You wore tons of makeup. You had all these rules. You had to smile all the time. You had to wear red lipstick. I was always on the borderline of getting kicked out for weight gain. If you went 5 pounds over your weight, you'd get a citation, and then if you got 2 citations, you were out. But it was hard work. It was hard work, and it was boring. All that, you kind of doing the very same moves every single night on the stage. You just went off into like thinking about what you're going to have for dinner after, what you needed to buy at the store. And by the time you got out at night, it was 4 a.m. Things were really kind of winding down. You went home, you slept all day, got up again when it was almost dark, 6 or 7, and did it over again. And it was every single night. It was 7 nights a week. There were no days off. It was ridiculous.
What was it like to go from being, a teen, very uncomfortable with your body on a literal farm in Kansas,
Yep.
directly to the demands of, like, the purest adult sexuality, that it's like the most intense, like a G-string and feathers on stage in Las Vegas in a hotel suite with Tom Jones, like these kinds of things that are like the most grown-up stuff, you know?
Well, it was scary, but I was pretty tough. I was pretty damn tough, like I mentioned before. I don't know why. I think I took after my dad, who was this, wow, my dad was like this tattooed, I will kick your ass if you even look at me cross-eyed kind of guy. And you did not mess with my dad. Tattoos back when nobody had tattoos. My dad was covered with them, and he didn't take any crap from anybody. I think I must have gotten that from my dad. And I was sort of like that. But, you know, in the wake of the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, I've been thinking over the past how many times I, barely escaped with my, life practically. The situations I would get myself into were just frightening. And
I get yourself into. I mean, your work, it was your job to do, to be an entertainer. You have to go to auditions. You have to go and network with people. Like, it's not a matter of it being your responsibility. It was a poisonous world.
It really was. And I honestly, at the time, I didn't understand all the finer points that I'm now really, as I get older, do understand. But casting couch and all that, boy, that was like every damn job you went to. It was, and I was always going out for roles of like the hooker, the showgirl, the stripper, that was all the parts I'd always show up for. So the times I found myself in an office, like at night, with a guy standing up from behind his desk with no pants on or whatever, it was just like unbelievable. So many times when I turned 30 and I went to get an agent who told me, 30 years old, get out of here, go back to Kansas, you're washed up, you throw. I mean, literally like that. I really thought, well, this is it. I'm 30. I'm still playing sexy. I'm not going to get any parts. This is over. And that interview with that guy came 1 week exactly before I got the Elvira part. So I'm so glad he didn't become my agent, or I would be paying, I would have been paying him like 10% or 15% or whatever it was back then.
You own Elvira, right?
I do. Yep.
That's a big deal.
It's a very big deal. To own the licensing of any character is a very big deal, because I don't think Pee-wee is one of the only people who, I call him Pee-wee and he calls me Elvira. It's so weird. That's what we've always called each other. It's just, it's one of those, I don't know. You have to be one to.
Despite having known each other for 5 years before those characters existed.
Yeah, I know. I'm always like, hey, Pee-wee, are we Elvira?
If you're wondering, Charo also calls him Pee-wee.
Well, she's almost in that. She's almost in our club. It's a very exclusive club.
Charo is basically that, only without a government name.
Exactly. I mean, there are a few people. There's like maybe, I don't know, Alice Cooper, maybe Gene Simmons, who can kind of have made their living off of this character that they invented and they own the rights to. And I don't know any other people that do that, but it's fantastic if you can do it. It's funny, you don't make as much money as you could by selling it out, maybe, but in the long run, you do make more money and you have more control, much more control. So I am glad that I hung on to that name. It's paying off bigger as the older I get and the longer it's been around. I
mean, we talked about Coffee Table Book. We have pinball machines, right?
Yeah.
What else are we looking at?
I have a new one coming out again.
There's the annual show at Knott's Berry Farm when it's transformed into Knott's Scary Farm.
Right. With slot machines. Slot machines are awesome, I tell you. I have 5 video games, and then I've done, I think, 4 slot machines. I have another one coming up. Those are awesome. I have a new line of clothing through Pinup Girl Clothing. I have a new line of jewelry, all kind of spooky goth jewelry from Sweet Romance. I just Funko toys are very big right now. I have a whole new line of action figures coming up. Oh my gosh, I could go on forever. Is merchandising the living hell out of this thing.
I mean, it's kind of an amazing thing to create something that has such an indelible impact. But you must also sometimes feel like subsumed by the hugeness of this character that you played. Like, how is it possible that this weird version of me is such a huge force in the world, and I am but a human being?
I do feel that way once in a while. I'm going, when did this take up? When did it get on a train and just start going? And I didn't know. It just I'm over here and she's over there. I don't know. It was odd. People were always saying earlier on. Well, I was always feeling I should do something else. People were saying, don't you get bored doing this Elvira character all the time? It's always Elvira, what, And I was thinking, yeah, I should go out and expand myself and do some other TV shows and some other things as different characters. And I very quickly found out that, I got hired for a pilot. I went in to do the pilot. It was during October, killed my Halloween season. I got paid scale. The pilot didn't go. It ruined a whole Halloween for me. I made about a tenth of what I would have been making that month. And I went, what the hell am I doing? I mean, I'm not Bill Shatner trying to get away from Star Trek for the rest of my life, Why not just jump on this character and write it?
I mean, you like it, right?
I love the character. Actually. It gets a little tiresome during Halloween right now, I gotta say.
Yeah, you were telling me this is the time of year when you sleep 4 hours a night.
I really do. I'm so messed up. I don't know if it's day or night, because in addition to doing 2 shows a night, I do 7 a.m. drive time radio interviews, and I do TV shows did one for the Sci-Fi Channel. I do this and that all day long, in addition to doing the 2 shows at night, which really kicked my butt.
And these are full production shows. You're singing and dancing in these shows in addition to, this isn't just you coming on saying a couple of one-liners and walking off stage while someone else does something.
No, I wish I could be Cher, where I just stand in one spot and sing, and kind of don't move. That's awesome. People are going, well, she's 71 and she still does a show. And I go, she flies in on a thing. She's just standing. They drop her down. She stands. I love Cher. Don't get me wrong.
Solomon Burke this thing. Solomon Burke just performed from a throne. You've got that red sofa. Just have them bring you in on the sofa, sit you down at the back, and have those half-naked dudes dance.
That is a good idea. Let me tell you, if I do any more live stuff, it will be like that, because I have spent this year dancing. I mean, I was a former dancer, so I still like to dance. I still like to do it, but I don't dance all year. Then I danced like crazy for a month, and I'm not dancing that big, but just enough to end up with cortisone shots in my shoulder, cortisone shot in my foot, at the chiropractor every single day, bruises from head to toe. I'm a mess. I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
Your Elvira shtick fits so squarely with this original form of fandom, right? This original geekery, the one that you had when you were a kid. Famous movie monsters and Frankenstein model kits. And you've been part of that world since you started doing Elvira, as a performer, as a celebrity. Mm-hmm. And it must be amazing to hear the stories from people who tell you what this supremely silly character means to them.
It really is weird, the stories I hear, and now I'm kind of used to it, but starting several years ago, people telling me how my character changed their life, and I'm going, how the hell did I do that? But they said gave them strength, gave them courage, gave them power, kind of stand up to bullies, stand up to the hypocrisy that was kind of happening around them, showing them that women can be sexy and strong at the same time. Because not just because you're sexy, you're a bimbo, you're an idiot. But you can be strong and you can be sexy and you can use your assets to make you more powerful. It's really crazy. It's how many people say that. I've had people even tell me that I have kept them from committing suicide, which I just, I can't believe. But I've had people tell me that many, many times. I don't know how a character like that can influence someone so much, but I'm learning that I guess, it can. It's weird. It's so strange to me. But I'm happy for it, and it makes it the thing about Elvira that I like the best, that I've actually changed some people's lives for the better, and in fact, possibly saved some lives, for crying out loud. You got to be pretty happy about that.
Cassandra, thank you so much for taking all this time to be on Bullseye. What a
welcome.
great joy to get to meet you.
Thanks. This was fun talking like this.
Cassandra Peterson, everybody. If you live in the Los Angeles area, there is still time to see her live as Elvira at Knott's Berry Farm, which this time of year, I am told, is Knott's Scary Farm. Go to the Bullseye page on MaximumFun.org for tickets and information.